Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm Jose.
And today we've seen Priscilla.
Yes.
The second Elvis-based biopic recently, because obviously there was Elvis.
Yes, which I loved. I loved the last Luhrmann one.
I slept through lots of that. I
Um,
was awake completely through this. This is written and directed by Sofia Coppola, and it's based on Priscilla Presley's memoir, Elvis and Me, which was published in 1985. Priscilla Presley's still going. She's 78 years old, I think,
Right.
and she serves as an executive producer on this.
right.
Not that I'm sure that means all that much, but this is a film with her backing, I guess.
Yes.
I thought it was really interesting.
I mean, I loved it, though. It's so interesting to compare it to the Austin Butler film, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about it because you said you slept through it, and that one was like so rousing and energetic and colorful, and yeah, and with a lively, energized, sexy Elvis, whereas this is really kind of grim, creepy, disturbing. Yeah, it kind of
His version of Elvis, you mean?
Priscilla's version of Elvis. Yeah.
Yes, so Jacob Elordi plays
Yeah.
Elvis in this.
And so the film is like, it begins creepy and it ends really sad. So it's not like how do you call it? An audience pleaser, I don't think. Though I do think I love Sofia Coppola, and I think this is, to me, a really fascinating film. Might be a great film, really.
It's very Sofia Coppola. In the female protagonist is one thing, but I think really what I associate with Coppola a lot is that kind of inside track on what fame is really like, the difference between the surface and the depth of fame. You know, her films have so often been thought of as superficial,
Yeah.
and it's not that. They're about the surface, and they're about the relationship between the surface and what it hides. And I think because she grew up in a famous family with incredibly successful relatives, her dad's Francis Ford Coppola, and she will have grown up around Hollywood in particular. You can certainly see like that being. So she's an expert on that.
Yeah.
Naturally.
But also, I think she brings something to cinema that really nobody else does. Well, maybe Greta Gerwig now, but I see her cinema as girly. Yeah, but girly in the best sense. Yeah, that she understands adolescent girls. She's been one. She sees the pleasures and the fascinations, or what fascinates these young women, and the sexuality and the longing, and things that you're not really very much used to seeing in cinema. But also you're shown that with a distance, yeah, and a sophisticated understanding of it. Yeah, it's not that the film is girly, so to speak. Yeah, it's that the perspective is
it's a female gaze.
Yeah, it's and a particular kind of female gaze, because it's not all women who would be interested in surfaces, in clothes, in eyelashes, in how clothes hang or fit, in interior decor. This is a film that is interested in all of those things, that kind of, and puts them to use, right? And actually, I thought it was interesting because the clothes are not particularly beautiful. In fact, they often hang very poorly on Priscilla. Yeah, they're too tight in the wrong places, or they're too baggy. Yeah, she's a woman who's overwhelmed by these clothes, right? But that's kind of made to be something very expressive. She's not allowed to choose her clothes.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. All this focus on the eyelashes and the painted nails and the clothes, it's not shown as something that she is hugely interested in, but it's about what she's being made to look like.
Yeah, her becoming what Elvis wants.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that scene where he takes her shopping, and they evaluate what she looks like in various dresses. It comes down to his point of view on her, and there's him sat there, the big I am, declaring what he thinks, and his gang of his entourage of just hangers on in sunglasses agreeing with him and saying this, that, and the other, and no women giving their opinions on
Well, I mean, yeah, the women really don't matter in this world at all.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the film begins. So this is really great opening, I think. That montage of, and it starts with painted nails on toes, and kind of trinkets and eyelashes and things like this. And it's like, it's a collection of things. Things are about being looked at, things to be looked at. And it's not just cosmetically altered body parts, but it's, trinkets around the house and things like that. And it's just a collection of things that make up Graceland and make up Priscilla's life, at the point where she's, with Elvis and is in Graceland. And it's like, well, Priscilla is one of these now. Well, that's what the film ultimately is going to get to. Is like Priscilla becomes one of these trinkets, as important as she could be to Elvis. And I believe every moment that he says that he loves her and that she means something to him. I believe him, and I believe he believes it. But he doesn't see it from her perspective.
Well, I think what the film makes, I think the film's great contribution in a way to a kind of a cultural discourse is the representation of Elvis, right? So the film is called Priscilla, but it shows us an aspect of Elvis that, we probably all suspected. I mean, isn't it weird that a guy starts dating a 14-year-old, right?
When he's 10 years older.
When he's 10 years older. And also, so much of his appeal was about him being at ease with his sexuality, kind of, his clear kind of love of sex, whereas in this one, it's so interesting because Jacob Elordi doesn't move well, right? So his movements aren't fluid, right? And so what you see him is having lots of sex, except with Priscilla, right?
You hear about his affairs.
You hear about his affairs,
with other women.
But he's not sexy, so you can see her desire for him. He's very good looking, he's very tender, and for most of it he's very respectful,
too respectful. I mean, this is the thing, it's a surprisingly sexless film.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't know very much about Priscilla Presley. I knew of her, but she was married to Elvis for quite a short period of time, 6 years, I think. And she hasn't been a figure that I've grown up with. And the imagery and the iconography around her, I don't get the feeling it's like especially associated with her, although she's kind of part of it.
There are moments like, some of the photographs are, precise reproductions and you recognize them instantly, sure. The wedding photos and so on. But actually, my sense of Priscilla, and I did grow up with, fan magazine photos of them, was that she was taller, that she was willowy, that she was a real beauty, whereas in this film, I mean, she's very attractive, but it comes across as little girl, a bit short-waisted, short-legged, right? And of course, the contrast between her and Jacob Elordi is like symbolic, right? Because there's such a difference between them as well.
He's so tall.
He's so tall in comparison to her that kind of he, what's the word?
Towers over her.
Yeah.
So this thing about the film being kind of sexist was I suppose a surprise to me, because I just didn't know anything about her life, and I was just reading as well that it's supposedly true, and she claims in her memoir that they didn't sleep together until their wedding night. It also says that claim has been contested by a biographer, but so who knows? But that's what the film shows. Yeah. And I mean, I did think it was interesting that she so clearly desires Elvis, and he's the one who's saying no, it needs to be special, it needs to be this and the other, and you're too young, he says at the start.
Yes.
And we see a couple of scenes where she clearly wants physical intimacy with him that he withholds from, and then before you know it, well, as soon as they're married, they pretty much have a baby immediately. And I'm like, I suppose I expected that moment of physical intimacy when they finally have sex to be a moment that was represented somehow in the film. It's not.
It's not.
It passes. But do you think that was weird?
Well, I thought it was interesting. I think it was weird because the thing is, so much of the film is him saying, "Oh, this has to be a sacred moment for me."
Yeah.
Right. And of course, he's making a distinction, which is not stated in the film, but it's clearly expressed between her being a good girl and a good woman and all the sluts he's sleeping around with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for him, that's important, but it's also an element of control because you know, that point that you were referring to, where she says, I also have needs, right? And kind of, my needs don't need to contradict your reading of the Bible or whatever it is he's reading. But the fact is that throughout the film, we never see her once sexually satisfied.
Mm.
Yeah, kind of. He's always either withholding, well, he's almost always withholding. Yeah, kind of, you hear of tons of affairs, but actually most of what you see is him jousting about with his male friends. Like he's clearly a boy's boy, and he loves being with his mates and whatever. And, her role is to be the wife waiting for him at home, doing what good wives are meant to do, which is like respond to the man's every need, really, whenever he wants. That's why he wants her there and doesn't want her elsewhere. He wants her always to be on call. Right?
Yeah, exactly. And the fact that she has never had a boyfriend before and is so much younger than he is part of that control. But I think it's interesting that you never get the sense that this is like a plan. He's not like a nefarious figure who's decided that a young woman will be someone I can control. But it's just a consequence of the difference in their ages, and that's something that he's happy with.
Yeah,
the fact that she can be handled in these ways, and then ultimately the resolution of the film finishes with her finally standing up for herself to the point where she leaves.
But you also get the sense that he's vulnerable. I mean, well, we see him being vulnerable, right? And we are also shown how he himself is controlled by so many other forces. Yeah, you're always seeing him on the phone, and he always ends up doing what he doesn't want to do. Yeah, the scripts, the music, nothing is what he wants, really. And it's almost like, Priscilla becomes the only thing in his life. Yeah,
he has control over.
That
it's true, because that's something that develops. That's not the way he is at the start. It's in the later stages of the film, you get those repeated scenes of him on the phone with a few references to the Colonel, who's obviously such a key figure in the other Elvis film. And so we just get that sense of control that from someone from the other end of the phone can tell him what to do, and that's when he also says these scripts are shit, these songs are shit. Why is nothing going my way? But yeah, as you said, like the one thing he can lash out at that point is Priscilla. He throws a fucking chair at her head for basically saying the same thing he has, which is I'm not convinced by this song. I mean, I thought that was a very weird scene. I'm struggling to get a handle on it, I suppose, because they play a couple of songs. He says, no, these are terrible. And then he asks her opinion. She gives it, not as forcefully as he's given it. He basically said this is shit, and she's like, oh, I'm not convinced. But she's not used to being asked her opinion anyway. Like, why is he speaking to me about this? I've never been involved in this before. And then the moment that she gives it, an opinion which he essentially agrees with, she gets a chair thrown at her
head. I didn't feel that the chair was thrown at her.
No, but near.
Yeah, I thought that the chair was an expression of rage and frustration that ended up near her, and both she and he are appalled by that. Yeah, but it's also part, and I think the script is so clever because you see him hitting her, and it does look accidental. Yeah, like I mean,
when they're fighting in bed with the pillows, and she hits him a little harder than he's expecting, and he lashes back.
Yeah. So there's first that. Secondly, there's the incident with the chair, and then there's really a kind of an almost sexual assault in the hotel.
Vegas hotel room.
Yeah. So there's a progression in that, really.
Yeah.
And I think the last thing, which is really the end of the marriage, is also a result of the pill taking, the constant separation, and the realization that she is like another woman, that she's not this innocent little child anymore. So, he treats her like he would, any of the other women. I thought.
Yeah. And that point at the end as well comes around the time that she the thing about sex as well when it comes to the affairs is we're talking about affairs, but the film doesn't show them as it shows them as reports in newspapers.
Yes.
And she asks him, and he's always denying it.
Well,
no, that's true. He says
it means several of them. Actually,
that's true. It's not the same. He says it's not the same, and it means nothing.
Yeah,
but he doesn't thoroughly deny it.
But also he says, if you at the very beginning, before they're even married or anything, he says, if you want to be my girl, you have to learn to accept this.
Yeah, you have to know that these sorts of things are going to happen.
Yeah.
But then she, what we see later on is her engaging in her own affair, even though it's shown kind of lightly and mildly, but it's her with this karate instructor, and it's a touch on the arm and a clear affection for him.
Yes.
And that's kind of all you need to imply this. And I mean, I don't know. I suppose I can't remember it clearly, but was the implication, or did you feel there was an implication that Elvis knew about that, and that's the reason that he is so aggressive with her in the room that night? Because did he say something like, "This is how a real man makes love," something like that?
Yeah.
And it's like this like 10 years or maybe not 10 years, but a long time. It's more than 10 years, in fact, of basically not showing Priscilla the affection and the desire that she wants. And as soon as her infidelity begins, then it comes out.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I think the film suggests it, so it's not. It's also not clear, but it's clearly suggested that she's now open to other people in a way that she hadn't been before. So that might be, a response to Elvis having heard something. But it's also interesting that I mean that sexual aggression is also a kind of inadequacy. It expresses an inadequacy. Yeah, a need for mastery, kind of, I don't know, a better lover, whatever, would have thought, well, how do I please her? Yeah. Yeah. Well, rather than, kind of, how do I just get off using this body? And possibly as quickly as possible, too. So yeah, it's a very, very interesting projection. I think the film is fascinating kind of visually. Yeah, the way that it suggests certain things. So, the way that, I mean, there's really kind of only one massive close-up of Jacob Elordi, right? And that's when he's at his most threatening. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed. Otherwise, it's like, you see him in medium close-up, or you see him in kind of long shot, really. But,
Which moment are you thinking of? I can't remember.
I'm thinking the moment where he threatens her. 2/3 of the way through the film. Yeah, I think before they're married, where he tells her to go. Yeah.
Oh, right, when he's in his office.
I think so. There's just that one huge close-up from below. Yeah, but kind of a large close-up. Well, the only one like that in the whole film, and it's when he's at his most threatening. When he's at his most threatening and most powerful. Yeah, because you could argue that, he's at his most threatening when he tries to sexually assault her, but, but also you do feel in that moment that actually his attempt at assaulting her is a failed
It's quite
potency.
a weak one, and
yeah.
I think you get the impression he's drunk, high, and not at his
can't
physical,
get it up.
Right. Yeah.
So he's jumping on her, but he can't really get it up.
No, I know what you mean.
So
it's interesting that thing about the difference in their heights is so key throughout the film, because there's a thing that could come out of that difference of the guy being so much taller, which is like a protective thing. And some women really respond to that in a very positive way. They like that feeling of being protected, being looked after. But I don't think that's something you ever get, even though he is tender and things like that. When the height difference is made apparent, that's not a feeling I think you ever get. It is always just the most vaguely threatening. It could be when she eventually comes to Graceland, because they have this kind of on-off thing, and then for a long time they don't see each other. She eventually comes to Graceland, and when she arrives, he kind of essentially gets her pinned by the wall. And even though it's friendly, and how are you, and I haven't seen you, and I like you, but he's got his hand, on the wall. She's next to the wall, and he's above her, and it's just like it's a control thing. He's in control of that moment, and it's not a protective, tender, lovely. It's just very slightly imposing. Although he's not an imposing. I mean, he's not built, right? He's slim, thin, and everything, but that height thing never goes away.
Yeah. And the control thing never goes away. I mean, you get the sense that even he brings her to Graceland, not so much to be with her, though there's an element of he does want to be with her, but also so that his family could keep her pure, keep her under watch, right? It's no accident that, the school she goes to is a Catholic girls' school. And, she is often on her own, but within the house, you get the feeling that Vernon, the father, is not really nice, and again, kind of, this is not the place for you, move over there, you're not allowed here, right? Like, kind of, even the grounds of the house are kind of policed. And you get the feeling that the main reason for her being there is to keep her pure for marriage, really. Yeah. You know, she is the girl he wants to marry. And her having been a 14-year-old schoolgirl is not unrelated to that.
But I think, yeah, so the thing about marriage, those scenes that we see a couple of, where Priscilla wants to get intimate with him when they're in bed together and he refuses, and there is this repeated line or idea of, you know, when the time's right, and then
and also I've got to choose the time,
right? Yeah, exactly.
That.
I have to decide when the time's right. And you know, and I'm thinking that, yeah, like they will have sex when he decides they're ready and everything, but then when the moment comes when you get the time was right, it's not about sex. Well, not on surface of it. It's about marriage, right? He presents her with a wedding ring, and so and clearly it's kind of tied together. But you know, the idea of marriage, and therefore we'll sleep together. But I don't know. I again, maybe that's just what you have to kind of get in tune with. Like I say, I was expecting their first physical intimacy, they're having sex for the first time, to be a moment. But I guess it's, for him, it's all about the marriage, and it's tied together with marriage, and so that's the film's sort of implication.
But the film is not about that. I mean, I think in some ways, you know, what the film is about, or one of the things that's so moving about it, is how they're both caught up in the gender roles of their time, right? You know, so I mean, he is also kind of performing the good old boy that he is expected to be, right? Like, kind of, you know, very polite, very nice, but really at his greatest ease with his mates, kind of playing, or, you know, or shooting guns. It's also the choices are significant. Playing football, shooting guns, or, you know, being rowdy, roughhousing. You know, so, and she's shown with her music, with her papers, with her clothes, with her eyelashes, with, often kind of, you know, in empty bedrooms waiting for the man to, you know, pose the question, really.
Yeah, well, there's a whole segment of the film where she's at Graceland, having moved there, and he's not there, and she's just waiting, and all that kind of promise that we've had. Like, she's been with Elvis in West Germany, where they meet, and they, you know, hang out together a lot there. And then she visits Graceland, and it's terribly exciting, and he takes her to Vegas, and it's even more exciting. But then when she moves there and she becomes a permanent fixture, he's nowhere to be seen. Like, the excitement doesn't need to be there, and from his perspective, she's there now. He doesn't need to, like, that kind of wooing and that kind of thing, I suppose, is less necessary. She's now the fixture that he wants her to be.
She's there for him to come back to, and he can't imagine that she's got a mind and needs and so on, and desires of her own. It's like, you know, it's as if him returning home should fulfill all her needs, all her desires. Like, you know, he just can't imagine her having desires outside of him. Which is, I think, why the film is so great, actually. You know, it's I mean, and the more I think about it, the greater it becomes, because, you know, you think of Elvis roughhousing with the boys is kind of rhymed at the end, you know, when they split up, and you could see how friendly and loving she is with the women in the house. Kind of, you know, she kisses the grandmother and the cook, which I think is significant and plays through, you know, with the other themes in the film. Of which, you know, what's significant is also, I think, in the presentation of Elvis, that kind of contrast between him with the boys and him on stage alone. Kind of, you know, you also see him figured as like a lone figure in the crowd, right? So there's the three things, you know, him being pictured with the boys, him being pictured almost always awkwardly with her, and him being alone in relation to a crowd. The Elvis 1968 special, you know, the bits where you see him performing on stage on tour. He is always like on his own. You know, the only different shot is that moment where he's not even hiding that he's sleeping with other people. So you see him answering the phone, and there's clearly another woman, on the bed, on his bed.
Mm.
Yeah. So anyway, I think a kind of an interesting choice of clearly very deliberately chosen shots. Yeah.
Mm.
A word maybe about the music, because I loved it. I loved the use of the music until the end. So all those early 1950s hits at the beginning of the film. So sorry, all those mid 50s poppy rock hits, which are so, I don't know, so teenager and sweet, and kind of they're so well chosen. And what I thought the choice of Dolly Parton and "I Will Always Love You," which I love the song, that was a bit cheesy. I mean, I found it moving. It moved me because the song always moves me, but actually, it was the song that was moving me, not the scene in relation to the song. Yeah, I thought the song, that choice of song, was too much.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It stood out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My God, it held my interest, right? And that is something, because it's a slow moving film, yeah, with kind of very carefully kind of framed and composed and edited, but it's not afraid to linger on things, right? I mean, there was a scene in a swimming pool where there was a splash, and it's almost like the edit waited until the splash had fully extended, right? Like the film wasn't in a hurry to go anywhere, right? And it's a film about loss and kind of the end of a marriage, really. Yeah. And about dissatisfaction, and about how what you expected glamorous star life to be ended up a disappointment, right? So it's you can argue that it's a bit of a downer, really, as opposed to Elvis, where for me it was just a thrill to see Austin Butler move. Really, it was like very energetic and sexy and so on. So that a film like this could really hold your attention and linger in the mind and reverberate, and I think it's really quite an achievement.
Yeah. Katie Spaney is the actress who plays Priscilla here, who I've never seen before. I don't know if she's been in very much before, but
yeah, she was wonderful.
She was in Bad Times at the El Royale. We saw that. I don't know. She was Rose Summer Spring. Doesn't ring a bell, but she was very good in this. I mean, I thought she was remarkable. Actually, she's remarkably beautiful, and I mean, you also see you get the feeling from Elvis's point of view why he would see this girl and be taken by her. And she does a great job of modulating her performance between basically incredibly young, naive, full of desire and excitement and everything being new to her, up to with like innocence and experiencing of like getting everything she wants and finding it wanting, and eventually becoming someone who will stand up for herself and leave. I think she does a really great job of developing that performance and changing it over the course of the film.
I think it's also worth mentioning Jacob Elordi, because in Saltburn, he's so warm and sexy, and it's kind of like a star-making performance, though arguably he was already one from TV's Euphoria. But I think this is a real performance. It would have been too easy, to make Elvis like, super sexy and warm and likable and so on. And, the performance is full of awkwardnesses and silences, and that are both physical, and also like, I mean, it's not just that his gaze is at a distance. It's, the things that he also kind of does with his body and his movement, and kind of, the way he walks. Obviously, it's all helped by the mise en scène, by how he's filmed. But I think, there's also a consciousness to that I think is really quite amazing. So, just to signal that, these are his last two films, and in one, it's a real glamorous film star performance. And in this one, I think it's a real actor's performance. So, someone to watch out for.
I just think it's a really, really well put together film. This, I think, I think that it's really the best of filmmaking in that the film is never really ambiguous as to what it's saying or the kind of things it wants you to feel. But there is an awful amount of room for interpretation as well in the scenes that it shows you, and what does a particular movement mean, or what does a particular shot mean, and how is it relating to any other? You can develop your own interpretations of really the specific meanings and how the relationships are developing stuff. But it's not overall thoroughly ambiguous. Like, it's pretty clear about what it's talking about. I think that's really accomplished filmmaking. That is.
Yes, it is. I really enjoyed it, and part of my question was, I'm enjoying this film that it seems both slow and also that is a downer, right? Yeah, which is kind of interesting in itself. So, and it's a film also that the more I think about it, it's like in just thinking through the various aspects, the greater it becomes. Yeah? So there's, the experience of watching, which I enjoyed very much, and I was surprised by my enjoying it. Yeah. And then kind of there's the process of the thinking through that we're doing now, which makes it kind of grow in my estimation.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant. Really good film.
All right. But on that note, we highly recommend. Thank you very much for listening. We're eavesdropping at the movies, and we are on
Apple Podcasts, Audible, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Facebook and Twitter at Eavesdrop Movies, and Blue Sky, eavesdropping.bsky.social, and the website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.